Hello, friends. Welcome back to Lessons from Our Animals. I am Emma. I'm an animal communicator, healer, and teacher. And today I thought it might be really nice for us to really level set on what is animal communication and how I see it to be. Because when I was first introduced or like found out about this world that animal communication existed, which I talked about in episode 1, I thought it was one thing. I thought animal communication was this one, it was this the like only certain people could do it, and it was this very kind of black and white type of conversation between one person who could communicate with animals and the animal, and that only certain people were blessed with this ability to do this. And it usually took place over the phone or like on a Zoom call or something. And it was just this like very kind of like back and forth type of thing. And so it took me a while to really come into my own gift, because my own way of communicating with animals is very different than what I thought it was, or what I thought it was supposed to be, or what it should be, or the only way it could be. And so for me, the way that I communicate with animals is through meditation. So I don't do it live or in person. I do it very much through opening the space and welcoming them in, and then us being the only ones there having this conversation together or doing energetic clearing or whatnot. And it really took me a while to finally get into like, this is okay. And this is the way that I meant to do it. And it doesn't make it any less powerful. Actually, doing it my way makes it more powerful for me than when I can conform myself to do it the way that I thought I was supposed to do it. And so let's just get into it. So essentially, animal communication is you having a conversation with an animal, right? It doesn't look any one way. It can look so many different ways, but at the bare like foundation core of what is animal communication, it is a conversation where you are able to hear what the animal is trying to say, and you are able to actually, you could just end it there. You're able to hear what they are saying, what they are trying to get across, their message. And then you can take it a step further and say, and you're able to give them information back. You are able to hold essentially a conversation with an animal. Now, this can happen in lots of different ways, right? It can happen in person where you are sitting with an animal or you're standing with an animal and you are having a conversation out. Maybe it's out loud or it's in your head, but you are in person, in real time, having that conversation with them. It may be that you do it at distance, right? And you do it through an image. So whether it's on the phone, through Zoom, or in meditation, you are using a image as a conduit for you to connect with that animal. Both are perfect. Both are very much real. And the conversation side of it, right, is there it can look in so many different ways too. So, like I said, taking that really in-person example, you may be speaking out loud and the animal is also returning information, whether it's through their movement, it's through them speaking to you in your head. It's through them sharing feelings with you. It's through them sharing images or scenes with you. And so it can look all these different ways. And there again, there's not one right way and there's not a wrong way. There's just a way. And I think again, if we took kind of the way that I thought it was, is that there's only these certain people that can do it. In my belief, in my opinion, we all can communicate with animals. Yes, it is going to come easier to some people than to others, and yet We all have the capability to communicate with animals. We were all born connected to the earth, connected to the beings around us. And as we grew up, as we live in this very modern world that is disconnected from nature, we put space, we shut down those gifts because we weren't using them. We didn't think we needed to use them, or we were told that's not how you communicate with an animal. You communicate with them through giving commands and expectations and things like that, and not through having this more open line of communication, right? It's this: animals don't need a voice, or they don't have a voice, right? Not even denying the voice, just not even recognizing that there's one to deny or there's one to take into consideration. And so being able to have these conversations can absolutely transform a connection, a relationship, an animal's life, just in so many ways. So, like I said, I believe we all can communicate with them. And I think those who are called to a podcast like this, or to animal communication, or to something like Explore Animal Communication, which is the container in which I support others in really tapping into their own animal communication gifts, that is part of your path here. Part of your path is communicating with animals, is having this connection, whether it's something that you are here to share with others in a like doing sessions kind of way, or it's literally just for you to connect with your own animals, and or maybe to share it with a rescue or a sanctuary or something like that. So, like I said, I believe we all can communicate with animals. And also, like I said, there's lots of different ways of going about it. And I think one way that we don't always count is someone like a trainer. And I'm not saying every trainer, because not every trainer is tapping into the animal in front of them. And the trainers who are able to see the subtle cues, who are able to speak the animal's language in the way that they need in order to truly understand, whether you're talking about a dog or a horse or a cat or any other animal that you're interacting with. That I know at least one horse trainer that I would consider to be an animal communicator in just the natural state in which she is able to move and form and communicate with an animal in a very nonverbal way, and in a way that the animal is able to trust that she is hearing and seeing what it is that they need in any given moment. And so seeing that dance is really beautiful. So trainers can fall into this container, and not every trainer will, right? So I just want to make that kind of clear. So let's talk about the different ways of communicating with animals. I, in my kind of experience, have seen that there's kind of two different ways of, or two different levels, if you will, of communicating with animals. There's more of like the physical level, right? So their physical experience in the world, maybe how their physical body is feeling. So aches and pains and different things like that. And maybe things like their favorite toy or their favorite activity. Like I see all of those things as a very like physical realm, physical level of communicating with them, right? Like that kind of level, that topic. And then there's more of this like energetic level or soul level of communication. And that goes underneath all of these things. And it gets to the heart and soul of the animal, and really what's driving their behavior or their actions in the world. So for me, my communications tend to happen more in this soul level, which it's always fun to see when the guardians come back and they're like, that is not what I was expecting, or I didn't realize my animal was so like perceptive of what was going on in my life. And so let's take, for example, your animal is having a health issue or crisis that is not resolving. It's something that's been going on for a while. You've been going to the vet. The vet's like, it should be getting better. I don't know why. We can try these different things, but like, there's not much more I can do. I've done everything I can, and like it should be getting better. This is, to me, like blinding lights, flashing lights saying this health crisis is coming from the root cause being the animal has a message that they're trying to share, a lesson that they're trying to share. There's something that is that you are needing to hear, do, see, understand in order for this health crisis to actually really resolve itself. So I love getting to the heart of things, right? If we go back to episode 1, when I connected in with my dog and was like, what are you the most scared of? Right? Physical realm level answer would be loud noises, right? Loud noises, people going to unknown places and having to stay there. Like those would have been the answers that like the physical level, physical realm would have provided. What was his actual answer? That I wasn't going to learn what he was here to teach me. That is the soul level. That is the core, the root cause of his fear, of his anxiety. And so being able to just kind of understand that there's these different types of connections, and that I thought there was only the physical, right? Like that's what animal communication is like, how is your life? How can I make it better? And it's, I want more food, or I want more treats, or I want to have more trips, or I want da 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 da. The energetic, the soul level is going to let us get a lot deeper. And this is where I have learned so many lessons, and where the guardians of the animals have learned so many lessons, and where this podcast was really birthed from, because there are so many really beautiful lessons that are coming from these animals that we can all learn from. And they're so much more connected and so much less hindered by the outside world, by conditioning, than we are. And so able to see a lot clearer, able to hear a lot clearer, and not putting lots of other things on top of it. And so I love getting to the soul of things. I love getting to the energetic, and it's just a really fun place to live and hang out and see what they have to say, because it's always something really fun. So I want to talk quickly just about the different ways of communicating. So I brought up a couple, but I just want to bring up a couple more. So the different ways that we can communicate with animals is one that I think most people assume is the only way, which is telepathy, right? Is having this connection where you're able to speak mind to mind with an animal. And I think when I talk about trainers being a part of this, a part of animal communication, being animal communicators, a lot of times it comes from this telepathy side of things. So it can have animal communication can happen in person, right? So again, whether you're talking out loud, or you're talking in your head, or you are, which I'll get into a little bit next, but if you're like just like picking up on things and you just know things, or you can feel things in their body, but like being in person is a really important aspect for you in order to tap into that energy, in order to tap into that animal, in order to be able to receive and to also share information with them. So live or over the phone, or in Zoom. So not in person in the sense you're with the animal, but you are with the person, the guardian, whether again through a phone call or through Zoom or FaceTime or whatever, where you're likely using an image of that animal in order to connect in to have this conversation. So this one for me became a little bit tricky, because I felt like the person was becoming the focus instead of the animal becoming the focus when I was doing it. And I didn't like that. I'm like, honestly, the way that I see it is that the animal I'm communicating with is my client. It's not the person. It's not the guardian. It's not the person who paid for the session. It is the animal, because that is the point of this. And the point is to understand them and to receive information from them and to talk to them. And so I really want it to be their time and be uninterrupted and to allow us to go in different places if we need to. There's a lot of times where I know I'm going on a lot of tangents, so hang in there. But there's a lot of times where somebody will sign up for a conversation only reading and it turns into an energetic clearing and a conversation because that's what the animal needed before we could really move on to have a truly meaningful conversation. Or maybe we're having a healing or an energetic clearing and it turns into a conversation. Or we're doing a conversation and a clearing, and then we end up pulling the person, their guardian, in to have kind of like a relationship clearing or something. So that's why I love the way that I do it, because it gives the freedom for the animal to get served in the way that they are needing to be served in that moment. And that's going to have the biggest impact for their life and likely their parents' life, their guardian's life, as well. So live on the phone, on Zoom. It could also be through meditation. So kind of how I was explaining, that's how I do it. I don't have the person or the guardian on the phone, or I don't have a call with them at all. It's all done through meditation, and I type up a whole transcript of everything that happens, and that is what gets sent over. And usually an audio file will go with it too, with just like some additional information and whatnot. So animal communication can happen through cards. So if you know about oracle cards or tarot cards, there are many people who are really called and accustomed to cards and are able to look at a card and really intuitively be able to pull out such deep meanings of it. And so I know at least one person that communicates with animals through cards. So they will ask a question to the animal, pull some cards, and then they're able to extrapolate the answer from the cards that come out from that kind of reading. Another way is through intuitive writing or drawing. So that might be that you connect in with the energy of the animal, and then you just allow yourself to start writing or to start drawing something, and you don't really know what's happening or why what's coming out is coming out, but it's just like this whole it's your process of things coming through and how it likes to present itself. And then maybe if you're somebody who draws a picture, that you look at the picture after, and from the photo or from the image that you created, you're able to give this whole story of the animal and what they're going through, what they're feeling, or what they're wanting, or whatever the kind of the intention behind that intuitive drawing was. Or intuitive writing might be a bunch of like keywords that you write out that at the moment you're like, this doesn't make any sense. And then when you go to interpret, it's just like this waterfall of words that come through. And then lastly, the one that comes through, and there can be so many different ways too that I just haven't thought of because I only have really my one way of doing it. But through free writing. So free writing would be like potentially either being with the animal or pulling up an image and asking them a question and then just writing, right? So kind of similar to intuitive writing, but you just write, and you don't think about what you're writing. You just write whatever comes through, and you just until the end. And then maybe you ask another question, and then you just free write everything. Or, maybe it's just like, what do you want to say? And then just whatever comes through. And so free writing is just simply writing all the things that come through without thinking, without processing, without editing. And that is the animal coming through. Now, I want to just preface all this to say, please try it all out. And please, I would not encourage you to charge people for sessions or portray yourself as someone who is really grounded and professional in your work if this is the first time you're really playing around with it. And I'm not saying you're not 100% accurate. And when you're giving information to somebody that is about their animal, that they can't necessarily go to their animal and say, can you back this up? Can you confirm this for me? That you have to be really mindful about that, right? Like, you're holding such a beautiful gift in your hands, And you want to make sure that what you're providing is as accurate as possible. And so just keeping that in mind as like you're playing around with this. And I mean, the ways that I really practiced and honed my gift was reaching out to friends, being like, hey, you have a cat. I didn't have a cat at the time. You have a cat. Do you mind if I connect in and communicate with your cat? And would you mind providing some feedback for me? And that is how I really honed my gift. I just randomly reached out to a lot of people that didn't know I was doing animal communication. It was just like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you mind if I connect in with your animals? Like, I want to see how this goes. And they were just so kind. And that is how I honed it. All right. I know I'm like all over the place here. So the last way that I really want to, or the last thing I want to touch on just when it comes from like animal communication and what is animal communication and how does it look and all those good things is the ways in which we can receive messages. So again, like I was saying at the beginning, that I really thought animal communication was a conversation. I didn't realize there was anything else. I mean, I look back at my past self and I love her so much because she was so open walking into this new world and at the same time was making so many assumptions about things. And I'm so grateful for her because she got me to where I am now. And so the ways in which you can receive messages through animal communication. So again, these are all ways of communicating with animals, whether it's you're receiving it and or the way that you are giving information to the animal. So first could be talking, right? So very verbal. You are talking to them, they are talking to you. So it could also be hearing, right? Because you're hearing the conversation that's taking place. So maybe you hear what they have to say, like maybe you hear it in your head or through your ear, or you just like hear it in your heart or your body. You might also hear other things that drop in that the animal's not saying. So for me, the way that this looks sometimes is when I'm tapping into their body to see, is there anything that they're needing support on right now or anything that they're wanting to come through that like I'll hear, kidneys or I'll hear liver or I'll hear something that pops in. That's what's most common for me is for hearing it besides hearing the conversation is things to do with the body to support the body. Now that doesn't have to be how it is for you. That's just how it is for me. So another way that is really common is feeling. So getting feelings about things. So whether that's a physical feeling in your body, because you're tapping into the animal and now you're feeling the physical feelings that they have in their body and your body. And then it's interpreting, okay, my shoulder just all of a sudden started to hurt. So it's my right shoulder. So let's go look at their right shoulder and see, how they respond to touch or to movement or, whatnot, or maybe asking the guardian, do they have tenderness in their shoulder? Do they tend to have a limp or, do they compensate or whatever the case may be? So it could be a physical feeling. It could be emotional feeling, right? So you're tapping into the animal and all of a sudden you're starting to feel really anxious or you feel really sad or you feel misunderstood or you feel frustrated or you feel really light and excited and bubbly. I've felt all of these different things with animals and it can be such an interesting experience getting to tap into an animal and feeling and being aware of that switch in your body of I was feeling really neutral or I wasn't feeling, super high or super low. And now all of a sudden I'm feeling this more of an extreme emotion. Cool. That's not mine. That's theirs. Like, can we tap into that? Can we maybe ask questions about that just so that I can confirm that is what what I'm feeling is what they're feeling, right? So feeling can be emotional, it can be a physical thing, it can be, I kind of put sensing and feeling together, which sensing can be also those things, and it can be, you have a sense of what they're trying to say, but aren't able to say, or don't have the right words to say, or they're just choosing not to say. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky sometimes of being mindful of what they're wanting to share and not oversharing or undersharing from what they're wanting to get across to their person, but getting a sense of this is the message that they are trying to get across. So maybe I can say it in a different way that will help the person really get that message the way that the animal is wanting them to get it. So sensing or feeling, seeing, so being really visual. So you might see things, right? So whether you see things with your eyes open or your eyes closed, it might be that the way that it mostly comes up for me specifically is first, because it happens in meditation, I see the environment that we're in. So every animal, we tend to be in a different environment. And so I'll see the environment and then I'll see the animal and how they're moving or how they're shifting or changing. And then I'll also see things that they have to show me. So something that I find that was really mind-blowing for me when I first realized it, and now when I think of it, I'm like, well, duh, is that a lot of times the animals will respond to a question with imagery, with a scene, with a picture, and not through words. And why does that make so much sense to me now? Because they don't actually speak our language, right? They don't speak any any of our languages. I mean, yes, we can get into like, well, parrots can speak. Okay, but that we're not talking about that, right? Like animals don't speak English or Spanish or Italian or anything, right? Like they don't speak that language. So it can be easier for them to get their point across or to answer something through imagery than through words, because imagery is such a universal language where our actual language is not, right? So they can be very visual if you are someone who can receive visual pictures and things, right? The animal, you're only going to be able to receive their message in the way that you're able to receive messages. So not everyone can see, not everyone can hear, not everyone can feel, not everyone's going to be able to do the same things and or receive it and have it happen in the same way. So it's all about like understanding what is yours and how do you receive it and leaning into that and not trying to be like, well, no, I have to have this in order to do it. No, you have to have whatever you have in order to do it. That's why you have it, right? Like how can we accept what our own intuitive gifts are in the way that we receive messages so that we can do what we came here to do. And then the last, like most common way of receiving messages is a knowing, right? So just knowing right off the bat, like not knowing why you know or how you know, but you know, that is another way of receiving messages. So it might be that you tap into an animal and all of a sudden you just have this like deep inner knowing of all these different things. Or maybe you ask you ask a question and you just have a knowing of what the answer is. You don't hear them say anything. You don't see them say anything. They don't show you anything. You don't get any kind of feeling, but you just know that you know the answer. That is a way of receiving messages. That is intuitive knowing. So those would be the most common. And then some of the lesser common ones are taste. So taste can be, a physical, actual taste for something, right? So especially if you're talking about food or whatnot, maybe you get a taste of like, oh, they really want this supplement that has like turmeric in it. That was something that came through recently. And you just have this taste of turmeric. Or maybe you taste the environment and the environment tastes off. And maybe it tastes off because the environment is full of artificial fragrances, and that's really causing harm to the animal. And so they're trying to get that message across of like, can we clear it out? Or maybe you taste like sage smoke and you're like, okay, this place or this animal needs a cleansing, a clearing, like an energetic cleansing, clearing with some sage smoke. How can we go about doing that? So taste can be a lot of different things. It can also be like a taste for aesthetics or training or whatever. And so it can come through in lots of different ways. And it's a lesser known one, I feel like, at least it was for me. And so if you have one of the more quote unquote common ones, this one will likely be more under the radar for you because you will have given more attention to the other ones. However, this one can have a really important impact in your life and in your animal's life. And then lastly, smell. So smell can be that you smell things, right? So just like everything that I just said about taste can be the same thing, but for smell. So smelling the environment or smelling the supplement or smelling the food or smelling the, just like whatever it is, like, you know, the saying, like, I smell a rat. So it could be that you smell something off in the way that the person's communicating with their animal, and like it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't smell authentic, right? And so it's just tapping into being aware of and being open to all the different ways that messages come through for you that you can then share with the animal and or with their person. And this is just, you know, we're scratching the surface of all of it. And I just thought it might be really nice to set the ground, the ground rule, not necessarily ground rules, but just like the foundation of what I consider to be animal communication. And it's such a wide berth. And animal communication can be with domestic animals and or wild animals. It can be with living animals and animals who have passed. And so if you have this very like strict way of looking at it, this is your invitation to kind of crack that open and see what else resonates, see what else might be true for the grand scheme of things, but also for you as well, because it can look so many different ways. And the way that you communicate with animals can be lots of different ways. Like for me personally, my number one way that I'm always going to go to, especially for a session and or for like something where I really need to make sure I'm getting the right, accurate everything, is meditation. That is where I make the biggest impact. It's where I receive the most information. It's where I receive the most complete information. It's where all of my senses and ways of receiving all come together in one. And I can do it I can do it in person, or I can do it live. It just doesn't, it's not as complete. It's like scratching the surface versus like really getting in there. And so for me, and as you'll learn, I'm sure throughout this podcast, I mixed human design and animal communication together. And so gate 48 in human design is the gate of depth. And so it makes sense that for somebody like me who has gate 48 defined in their chart, that I don't want to just scratch the surface. I want to like get in there. And so, yes, I can do it live or in person, and yet it's not my preferred way of doing it. I invite animals to come back if they have a message for their person. And I will receive those while I am out walking in nature. I've received them while I was driving. I've received them while doing other sessions. Those come through in lots of different ways. And I would say the last way that I receive or like can I do it. No, those are really like the only two ways or like a couple of ways that I do it. I've done it through cards are not, I don't interpret them. I don't have that like gift where it comes so easy to be like, look at the card and be like, oh, well, this makes sense. I look at the card and I'm like, I still don't get it. Like, or I'll read the meaning of the card for the question and I'm like, I don't know how to interpret this, because that is not the way that I'm meant to do it. And so I don't lean into that, and I let that go, and I lean into the ways that work for me. So anyway, I'm going to leave this here. If you, I invite you all to really try it out for yourself and see what feels good to you or what works best for you, and like what ways in which you receive messages, because the way that you receive messages from an animal is going to be the same way you receive messages from your guides, from the universe, from those who have passed. And so maybe it's easier for you to tap into, oh, this is how I receive messages from, or this is how I like to receive messages, right? In which form, like in meditation or out walking or whatever, from my guides, from the universe, and being able to really see those on either side. So which way it's easier for you to tapping into your guides in the universe and or tapping into animals and seeing how they're similar or how they're different. All right. I hope this episode was helpful. I hope it was enlightening, and I hope that it did what it did for me so many years ago as I really explored this world and opened up my eyes to there being so many different ways. And it wasn't just this one thing, and not just a couple people could do it, that everyone really has this gift inside of them if they choose to tap into it, if they feel called to tap into it. We all have this gift. So I hope you have an amazing day, and I am sending you all so much love. Bye for now.